Reverend Robert Blake, a missionary of the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa, came to Malawi in the year 1892. A mission had already been started in Chief Chiwera's area in 1889, when Reverend A.C. Murray and Reverend T.C.B. Flock pitched their tents at Mvera, 40 miles west of Lake Nyasa. Robert Blake made his first journey into the area of Chief Msakambewa together with Reverend Murray. In April 1894, he returned to Msakambewa and with his young wife started building his station at the confluence of the Lingadzi River and the Temba stream. The highest hill in the surrounding country was Kongwe, a few miles away across the Lingadzi River, and so the station came to be known as Kongwe. A grant of land was applied for from the government. 1,000 acres was bought at 35 cents an acre. It had a plentiful water supply and good land for the development of a secondary school, such as would be started at Kongwe nearly 60 years later. Robert Blake was a practical man. Soon his garden began to have its influence on people around the station. Chief Mchamboza, who lived 17 miles away, produced wheat and vegetables of different kinds. He was proud that his produce was just as good as that of his friend Robert Blake, from whom he received his seed and all the information about the care of his crops. Robert Blake became very proficient in the use of the language of the people among whom he worked. He wrote a book, Mbiri Yakale, which covers the history of the Old Testament. When these old men were young, this excellent book, of which many thousands have been printed, was the reader in the 4th class of the village elementary schools. It was the last step toward the educational objective of the day, the reading of the Bible itself. It is still widely used in elementary schools today. Robert Blake was the founder of the educational work done through the village elementary schools in the large area between the Bua River and the Lumbadzi River. The old people around Kongwe remember him and often speak of him. The chiefs of the area decided that the new secondary school, which was to be built in 1958, should be called the Robert Blake School. The secondary school, now at Kongwe, however, had its beginning in 1951 at Mkoma, the head station of the Church of Central Africa Presbyterian in Malawi's central region. The school started with 5 pupils. The first and only teacher was Miss M.H. Lowe, who still maintains a position in the school today as senior mathematics teacher.
Then we have the perpendicular PM onto the axis OX. We'll call this the distance H, and PM we call R. Now we'll see what happens when the line OP is rotated about the axis of OX. Why did we call the line Y is equal to MX? Yes, sir?
Because it is a line through the origin with gradient equal to M.
Yes, thank you.
In October 1954, the 5th group of pupils to be taken into the school came to Kongwe, and no more pupils were accepted at Mkoma. Until this time, the school was supported only by the mission. No government grant had yet been received. And even as late as 1955, a small 2-roomed building was considered sufficient accommodation for the school. Less than 2 years later, a development scheme to cost $106,000 was approved by the government, which agreed to pay 75% of the estimated cost. The first staff dwelling, at first to be used by the builder, and in which the headmaster now lives, went up in 1958. In 1960, the school could move into the new building, which today forms the main building of the Robert Blake School. Besides offices, the library, and the staff room, the main building contains the classrooms used for Forms 2 and 3. The science block followed the main building and contains 2 labs. Both include lecture theater space. With the help of grants from various organizations, the science block is now as well equipped as any other in Malawi. With the intended expansion, however, 1 more lab is needed for biology and agriculture. With a block including 2 more classrooms for Form 5 and ablutions, the development of a school for 180 pupils was completed. 1962 saw the further development of 2 more classrooms for the 4th form. This brought the number of pupil places to 240. An increase in numbers in 1965 led to the housing of the 2 Form 1 classes in an old elementary school dormitory. A similar building serves as the school infirmary. The dining hall and kitchen block was part of the original development scheme, so was the dormitory Mlashi, the only double-storied building within miles. Nyasa and Ghana and also Agre dormitories were part of the second period of development. Staff housing varies greatly. The grass roofs of earlier days caused the house on this site to be burned down twice. The oldest house on the station was built 50 years ago. 5 new houses, such as the one now occupied by the headmaster, were included in the original development scheme. One of these is the residence of Peace Corps volunteers. Mr. and Mrs. Herod of the Peace Corps live in this building, and Mr. Chiandira and his family occupy one of the more recent additions to staff housing. A Massey Ferguson tractor helps to cultivate the large garden, which supplies vegetables to 12 staff houses and 300 pupils at the school dining room. 3 times a week, vegetables are packed in baskets and delivered to the various staff houses at a charge of approximately $2 per person per month. The school mill grinds corn for the school and villages around Kongwe. The station's pigsties house between 50 and 60 pigs. Once a week, pork is supplied to the school. School staff and other station residents can buy pork at 14 cents a pound. A diesel engine lifts water to the storage tanks, which deliver the station's daily need of 15,000 gallons. The original development scheme of 1957 included a hydroelectric plant. A concrete dam was constructed across the Lingadzi River. From the dam, water flows in a concrete channel to the turbine, which generates 24½ horsepower and turns a generator which can produce 16 kilowatts of power and supplies the station's present need of 10 kilowatts. The pupils of the Robert Blake School come to Kongwe by bus. Most of them are from the central region, but a large number come from the northern region, which can involve a journey of 360 miles, 2 days by bus and sometimes miles on foot to the nearest bus route. The lake steamer brings some from the north. The bus brings them to Dowa, and they walk the remaining 2½ miles to the school with luggage on heads and shoulders. Many are glad to see old friends again, and they settle down in the dormitories to talk about their journeys and the new pupils who have just joined the school. At sunrise every morning, the bell calls all sleepers to rise. A typical day in school life begins. Perhaps one day is much like another, yet activities are many and varied. After breakfast and morning assembly, we shall visit classrooms, go to the dining room, visit the infirmary, and see afternoon activities. Come along, get dressed quickly. After a wash and perhaps a shave, it's chow time. Breakfast consists of a thin mush of cornmeal, 4 ounces per boy, which is cooked with 1½ ounces of sugar. After breakfast, the dining hall is cleared and swept, for this same hall serves also for all other large meetings, including morning assembly. When the teachers enter at 7, the pupils are already in the hall. Morning assembly or morning prayers is the only all-school activity in which the language medium is Chinyanja.
Good morning. Timbe nyimbo 120. Ndime 1, 3, and 4.
After singing, the headmaster reads a passage of scripture from the Nyanja Bible, and then leads the assembled school in prayer, asking for guidance and clear minds in preparation for a new day of classes. Leaving the dining hall, the pupils usually divide into 2 streams. Some go to the main entrance of the school, others reach their classrooms by a shorter route. All now get ready to begin their classes. On the staff of the school, there are 6 missionary members with 13 years to less than 1 year's experience in teaching at the school. Mr. Lewitz, one missionary teacher, has been teaching geography at Kongwe for 12 years.
Today we want to revise the geography of Malawi. And first of all, I want one of you to come and show us the position of Malawi on the map of Africa.
It lies to the west of Lake Malawi in Central Africa.
Thank you. Then I want one of you to come and show us the position of Kongwe on this map of Malawi.
Kongwe Secondary School lies 2.5 miles north of Dowa, near Kongwe Mountain in central region of Malawi.
Missionary teacher Andre Dreckmayer teaches the chemistry section of the general science syllabus. The technological background of first-year boys is almost nil. Few have even used an electric switch, held the receiver of a telephone, or felt the tingle of an electric current. Words and concepts such as cylinder, piston, fluids, compression, gears, and acceleration find no familiar ground in the pre-secondary school lives of these boys. As a result, the science teacher must lay the most basic foundation before he can begin to teach science as directed by the syllabus. Besides the headmaster, the only Malawian member of staff is Mr. Chiandira. He teaches history and Nyanja language.
After the first receives one of the legs, and the rest receive small pieces of meat. This maintains team spirit.
One of the 6 Peace Corps volunteers on the staff, Marge Herod, teaches French.
Read the parts that you had yesterday. Paul, you begin.
Ah, vous êtes prêts. Qu'est-ce que vous portez là?
Une bannière. Il n'y a pas de cérémonie sans drapeau.
Les comptes levés, les voilà. Le dimanche officiel.
Allez au divan de l'huile.
Les comptes de la vie ici.
Missionary member Johan Lowe, who holds his PhD from Yale University, is teaching Nyanja grammar to a Form 4 class.
The second one, going to, we say, Adapita Kudowa Kukatenga Makalata, that means to go and take letters. We come to the third example, Akalima Kunokale. Then what would that indicate?
The car in that sentence indicates the repeated action in the past.
Mrs. Cornwall, a British expatriate, brings the Kongwe staff of 2 Malawians, 6 missionary, and 6 Peace Corps teachers to a total of 15. She teaches English and is librarian. The school library is located in a large room which houses the stacks and study space. The stacks contain a collection of approximately 3,000 volumes, which are mostly gifts, and a number of appropriate periodicals. Library space is sufficient to accommodate a class of 30. The pupils browse through the stacks, which are classified under the Dewey system, and examine reading material of special interest or that needed for other class work. They are permitted to check out their finds for 1 week. Women from villages around Kongwe come to the school hoping to make a little money during morning break from the sale of sugarcane, sweet potatoes, or biscuits. This mother, selling biscuits, has a son studying at Michigan State University. The pupils' tuck shop is operated by the Student Christian Organization, which uses proceeds for the annual camp fees of its members. Teachers meet in the staff room to relax over a cup of tea, or probably coffee if you are an American. Conversation is typical of most school staff rooms. Yes, you've guessed it, all the problems of teaching such difficult subjects as English or perhaps physics. See Peace Corps volunteer Bob Moffitt trying.
Mechanics. The pulley system is one of the simple machines that we've been studying. Now, if this was the load or the output of this particular pulley system, what would be the velocity ratio of this system?
6.
Fine, okay. Now, what do we mean by mechanical advantage? Bevan?
It is the number of times the force at the input is multiplied at the output.
Fine. Now we want to see a simple demonstration of how the force at the input is multiplied at the output.
Pupils have a word they use for teachers who get worked up over subject material, as Peace Corps volunteer Frank Brown does here. The word is serious, meaning serious.
Yes, up the hill went. One dark, dank evening last week, I saw a leopard.
Now, some of these two angles are what? This angle plus this angle. 80 degrees. Now, these two angles and this angle.
Pre-secondary schooling is often weak, and teaching methods in this new environment are not always easy to grasp. As a result, pupils need and appreciate individual help. Here, Peace Corps volunteer Bob Hayes initiates a Form 1 class into the mysteries of geometry. Elementary English grammar, but also the heights of Shakespeare. Peace Corps volunteer Bob Holland and pupils with Macbeth.
So withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet around it.
Speak, if you can. What are you?
Oh, hail Macbeth, hail to thee, son of Glamis.
Oh, hail Macbeth, hail to thee, son of Cordo. Oh, hail Macbeth, that shall be king hereafter.
While classes continue, the cooks stoke the fires using cords of wood in preparation for 300 hungry boys who have spent 5.5 hours in morning classes. Lunch, as well as the evening meal, usually consists of a stiff mush of cornmeal called nsima and boiled beans. Twice or 3 times a week, the cornmeal mush may be replaced by boiled rice. The food is prepared in large cauldrons from which it is served into serving dishes. Each dish contains food for 4 boys. KP duty comes once a month for all. Serving includes collecting tubs of beans, meat or vegetables, and plates of mush from the kitchen and serving them to the server's own table. Each boy goes to the shelf where he keeps his plates and then to his seat. At 9 ounces per pupil per meal, 170 pounds of cornmeal go into the cauldrons for lunch. After a prayer, the serving of food into individual plates begins. Quite a large chunk of nsima goes into each plate. The food in the large tub is called relish, which is often beans, but 3 times a week the tub contains meat or dried fish. In season, vegetables come from the school garden thrice weekly. At the school, it is customary to eat with a fork and spoon. A bit of enzima on the fork goes into the relish before it finds its way to the mouth. Not only schoolboys, but also members of the staff often think it much more natural to eat enzima with the hands rather than with a fork. After the meal is finished, the servers clear the tables, wipe them with a damp cloth, and sweep the floor with short palm leaf brooms. One turn at KP lasts 1 day, so after tonight's meal, freedom. After lunch, each boy takes his own plates, washes them in hot soapy water, and after a rinse, returns them to his shelf. At 2:15, most afternoons, classes begin again. Peace Corps volunteer Dave Herod teaches Form 2 history.
The effect of Columbus' discovery of Central America was that it led to the building of the great Spanish Empire.
Missionary staff member Yoki Dupree teaches biology.
And that is called? And the small leaves here, and they are?
Sepals.
And the big ones?
Petals.
Now if we go to the inside, we must first take off the petals. So take off your petals.
The secondary school course leads to the Cambridge School Certificate Examination in November every year. The headmaster of the school supervises the examination. Examinations are always a sweat. Afternoon activities may occasionally start with a stop at the infirmary for real or often imagined aches and pains. A Peace Corps volunteer is in charge of the infirmary. As he is about to leave, another takes over from him. Interested pupils help with the dressing of wounds and other duties. Seldom does the infirmary need to house many inpatients, but a mumps epidemic may keep beds occupied for weeks on end. In a country where grass grows so fast in the rainy season, a great deal of grass cutting needs to be done. Every afternoon, a group of boys from one dormitory does some work to help keep the surroundings of the school neat. An athletics and football field is a great asset to any school. The leveling at Kongwe was paid for by funds from the Bite Trust in Rhodesia. Calisthenics, football, and athletics practice all progress at the same time. Here they go. Kongwe has done well in athletics and placed first in recent competition with schools in the central region. This jumper placed second in the high jump in this year's national competition. The individual movements are carefully practiced. Here, the corner kick. The sportsmaster gives detailed instruction by means of the blackboard in preparation for tomorrow's game.
There are your two defending fullbacks. I do not want this winger to shoot back to his center as you did on Saturday. Not from there. When you set the ball up for a spike, this is the way you do it.
Here, Peace Corps volunteer Dave Herod instructs his boys in volleyball. Saturday is a big day. It means release from the confines of the classroom and permission to head for town and the marketplace. In effect, it means freedom. But freedom starts with responsibility, and that responsibility starts right at school. First is a general cleanup of quarters, and if you happen to be one of the lucky few whose turn it is for duty, then you had better get busy, because no one can leave until you are finished. Wash the windows, sweep the floors, and of all the humiliating things, those latrines have got to be scrubbed. If it is not your turn for cleanup duty, you might sneak in a card or checker game before inspection. That is, if you don't have any washing or ironing to do. And believe me, ironing with one of these babies is no cinch. You never know whom you'll meet in town, so a quick shower and a liberal sprinkling of cologne is always in order. If you've gone a couple of weeks without a trim, it might be worthwhile to pay the local barber a visit. His prices are pretty reasonable, especially if he is your roommate. Well, inspection is finally over, and all that's necessary now is getting one's name on that list. The sun is nice today, perfect for strolling through town and looking tops in your Sunday best. It is getting to that time of year now when rain can ruin a Saturday. Nobody looks good if he has to walk through town looking like a drenched chicken. Dowa is located 2½ miles from Kongwe and is the Boma, or government headquarters for Dowa district, one of the 7 districts in the central region. Even though a government headquarters, it is a small town even by Malawi standards. Besides the Boma are a post office, small hospital, a dozen or so Indian shops, and the market, which fills with 1,000 or 2 buyers and sellers on weekends. The cost of market food is very reasonable. Eggs at 20 cents a dozen, beef and pork, not necessarily cut to choice, at 21 cents a pound. 3 large tomatoes at 4 cents, and so prices go on. Oranges, bananas, mangoes, pineapples, peaches, and pawpaws are commonly found fruits. Vegetables are also plenty in season. Schoolboys are not the only Kongweites to find their way to the market. Staff members also enjoy the fruits of negotiation across the bargaining map. If you happen to be exotic in your tastes, the market offers specialties such as whole dried mice, termites, and locusts in season. Acid indigestion? Then don't forget to stop at the local medicine man's counter. Saturday is also the day for most inter-school sports competitions. Volunteer Frank Brown is warming his team up before the Saturday game. He coached his team to national victory this year. Basketball, one of the favorite sports in secondary schools today, was introduced in Malawi by Peace Corps volunteers in 1963. A much older and the most popular sport in Malawi is a variety of football that lives up to the name much more than the American version. Kongwe's team is a favorite in the central region and usually performs well against other teams. The biggest game of the year is the traditional and feared match against Dedza Secondary School. Besides sports, clubs form the other major part of the school's extracurricular activities. The Science Club's project this year is the study of the automobile. The club car is a 4-cylinder Austin A40 with mechanical and hydraulic brakes and an easily disassembled engine. The study of mechanics in this concrete fashion makes fundamental mechanical theory much easier to grasp for pupils who have never before heard of hydraulics, differentials, leverage, gear ratios, or compression. Good large eggs are the pride of the Young Farmers Club. The club has big plans for the future, but at present its attention is given mainly to its 20 chickens and the little tract of land where it has an irrigated vegetable garden. The purpose of this club is to create interest in agriculture, the most important industry of Malawi. Pupils who previously would not do agricultural work when everybody in the school was required to take part in such exercise, now place their names on the waiting list for membership in the YFC. The YFC is assisted by interested members of staff. Field trips, arranged by government officials or by the headmaster of the school, bring members into contact with what is happening agriculturally in Malawi. Members learn to see that farming can pay, that a farmer needs to work, and that a great deal of this work is brain work.
Well, gentlemen, It is my privilege this afternoon to welcome you to this house for our permanent debate. In the house are two leaders, the leaders of the government and opposition. To my left is Mr. Chiwa, leader of the government.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that Pan-Africanism be highly promoted in our continent. I'm going to tell you some of the aims of Pan-Africanism. One of its aims is to promote the standard of Pan-Africanism according to the present situation.
Obviously, in that case, it will bring us great headache in this continent. You know pretty well that we have different backgrounds. Some belong to British backgrounds, some French backgrounds, some Portuguese backgrounds, and so to speak. Now, I'm afraid with such different backgrounds.
The presentation may lack logic, but if it is zeal you are looking for, you'll find it fully embodied in the debating club. Here, pupils have an opportunity to learn and practice parliamentary procedure and test their powers of oratory.
Well, brethren, we have heard the two leaders debating on Pan-Africanism and would like to have comments from the floor.
Mr. Speaker, am I not an African? What about the man in Ghana? Is he not an African? We are all Africans, so let us be proud of what we are, and let us all be united under the same continent of Africa as brothers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The African Music Society is a group of pupils who attempt to maintain traditional dances and occasionally put on a play of African themes. This dance is one of the Malepenga dances from the northern region. This circular dance is known as the Chimganda. It is a tribal dance from the central region. This dance is usually performed during the day and by men only. It has a counterpart, the Chimtale, which is performed by women.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Much of the authority and responsibility for maintaining discipline among the boys is given to the class and dormitory prefects. When pupils have a complaint regarding food, dormitory conditions, or unfair treatment, they take the complaint to the prefects, who either settle the matter or take it to the appropriate staff member. Problems of a more general nature usually bring the prefects as a representative body to negotiate with the headmaster. Sunday at Kongwe is a day of quiet rest and worship. Almost 80% of the pupils claim affiliation with the Church of Central Africa Presbyterian, of which Kongwe is a station. Most of the boys attend the weekly service held in the station church. One of the most active campus groups is the Kongwe branch of the Student Christian Organization, an internationally affiliated, non-denominational organization.
The theme of our Bible study this evening is personal faith. Let's go to our respective groups.
Amen.
Amen. Let's open our Bibles to 1 John 5. The first question is, can I be sure that I am saved?
This organization gathers every Sunday evening when they first meet together for instruction and then divide into small cell groups. With staff members called senior friends, they follow a course of Bible study and related discussion.
Since we have been in Bible study groups, are there any questions from the groups?
After these smaller group discussions, all reassemble for discussion of problems not answered in the smaller groups. and to share ideas and thoughts which were helpful. And so ends our story of Kongwe. We've enjoyed having you with us. Pay us a visit, won't you? We'd like to be your host.